Hello, everybody, and happy holidays to you. Hopefully, everybody had a great Christmas, and hopefully, you guys spent time with your family, friends, had a great laughs, some fun, relaxed if that's what you was doing. And yes, we're kicking it off again. We have another amazing episode. This is going to be our kickoff. We have an amazing guest. We have Michaelene Dawers, and she brings her considerable talent, education, and certifications to Quietus Beats, continuing education courses and funeral services, and in her specialized consulting for death care professionals in need of guidance in culturally or socially sensitive situations. Michaelene offers appropriate, impactful variations of decent care. And she's here to tell her story today. And before we get started, do me a favor. If it's your first time tuning in, head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you guys be notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, I have to let you guys know that this is for educational purposes only. The things that we talk about is from our experiences. Please take what you can from it. But if you guys are struggling, please seek professional help. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring up my next guest. You guys sit back and enjoy. And please, by all means, have your questions, put them in the comments. We're going to get them answered for you. Michaelene,
Hi.
how are you doing?
Hi. I'm doing wonderful today.
Yeah, well, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. I'm happy to be here to talk about grief, death, a little bit about me and what I do, my qualifications, what makes me very well versed in end of life care, if you will.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. So before we get started, tell people where you're from.
My name's Michaelene. I am a licensed funeral director in 7 states. I currently reside in the state of Indiana, but I have lived all over the country from West Coast to the Midwest. With all the moves I've done in the last 10 years, we're looking at another move down to Kentucky come this summer to continue doing what I'm doing. I teach funeral service at multiple colleges right now for both associate's and bachelor's degree programs.
Okay.
Um, like I said, I'm licensed in 7 states, almost 8 states. And the newest qualification I have is to become a fellow thanatologist. So that is one step beyond a certified thanatologist. And thanatology is the study of death, dying, bereavement, grief. It just adds that one more notch and one more set of letters to the back of my name to show that I can care for people um, quite well, apparently.
Well, I definitely appreciate your work and congratulations on your certifications and
Thank you.
the direction that you're going in. I'm right there with you. Every opportunity, the doors that open up, I like to go through them as well. I like to see what's in there, take something back, educate people myself. Now, how did how did you get into this work? You know?
It was accidental, honestly. Back in the day, many moons ago, I graduated high school. Well, actually, we might need to go back a little bit further than that. While I was in high school, I grew up in Southern California, and I was curious about death and dying. I wanted to see what went on. Why are people crying? Why are they grieving? I went to Catholic school, so we had a lot of services that were full, you know, funerals for people that we could easily go into if we wanted to, just for sake of being at the school. My mother, I remember her getting a little perturbed at me because I don't want to say I crashed somebody's funeral, but I did show up and stand in the back just to see how it went, to see what the practices were, because at the time I hadn't really experienced death of any human,
Right.
only pets at the time. So fast forward a couple years, I'm in college or getting ready to go to college, and I have to do a project to graduate from my senior year of high school. And somebody said, and this is makes me laugh a little bit. Somebody was not being nice to me and said, "With your glowing personality, why don't you go to a funeral home and do your project? You'll fit in great there." because everybody thinks that funeral service and funeral directors are, sad and morose and very down about things. And
Right.
you know what? I said, you know what? Fine. I will. And I did. And I spent a year in that funeral home volunteering my time, helping out around the funeral home, getting to see all the different cultures and backgrounds that came into this location. And you know what? I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I ended up going to college locally where I was living, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And mortuary school was about 3 hours away. And I said, I can't do that. That's too far. Um, One day my mom said, "You can't live at home forever. You have to go somewhere, but it's not going to be here." And I said, "My plan is just to live here on this couch forever." And she goes, Absolutely not. We're not doing that. Something, anything." So I passed up nursing. I passed up respiratory. I passed up physical therapy. And I did my general eds. And I said, you know what? Heck, I'm going to go do funeral service. And it took me longer than it should have, but I did it. I got an associate's in science and mortuary science from Cypress College in 2013, I think. So about 10 years ago now. And then we moved. I had met my husband and we moved across the country before I even got to walk in graduation. Um, we moved to Indiana first, which is where I'm at now. And I couldn't find a job here to save my life. So we went up to Wisconsin and I learned about death care in the rural communities. And I mean 600 people to a town, rural, middle of nowhere. And it was great. I learned from really old school, wonderful funeral directors, which is very opposite of what the education I had was in Los Angeles, where I was originally from. From there, I said, you know what? Maybe I don't want to be a funeral director anymore. Maybe I'll get a bachelor's degree in religious studies and go out of funeral service. Well, what happened is I got a bachelor's degree in religious studies, focusing in hospice and palliative care. And then I went off to Minnesota that requires a bachelor's degree to work for funeral service. Worked there. My husband got an opportunity in the state of Washington. I followed him along there after I had my daughter. And what happened was I realized I can't pay back these student loans. So I kept getting more education and I tried to get out of funeral service again. And I said, I'm going to get a master's degree in emergency management and I'm going to save the country from natural disasters. And I got a mass casualty disaster degree focusing on loss of life for emergency management. Do you see a pattern going on here?
I do. It's like no, you everything that you tried to do to get away from it, it said no,
Can't get away. No.
We're coming back.
So then I decided that I was going to get another master's degree. Why? Why not? So I got that master's degree in thanatology out of Marion University in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. I got it remotely. I just walked in that graduation a couple weeks ago up in Wisconsin. I drove up there and I focused on psychedelics and end-of-life care. And then I said, you know what? While I'm doing this, I might as well get a doctorate. So now I'm getting a PhD in mind-body medicine, focusing in end-of-life care and trauma.
See, I love that though, right? Because it's the typical story that if a person doesn't understand it, that like you were following your gift, and every time you try to go somewhere, your gift said, "No, come on back over here." And no matter where you went, is drawing you in, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you can't get away from it. I do understand, and congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you.
Like, wow, man, that is truly impressive. And I want to see everything that you do, man, because that just sounds amazing. Now, when we talk about end of life care, and this is crazy, right? Because I just partnered with an organization, and they just had a graduation. Their first graduation, 64 death doulas just entered into this field of end of life care. That has been, it has been like something that has been pulling at me, And I was telling them, I said, it's almost as if this is how it's supposed to be, because
Yes.
I walk with people after they lose people, right? So I have a really vast understanding of the grieving process when it comes down to men, but also talking with women and things like that. It's like, okay, I can take the things that I've learned over here and I can educate our female counterparts on what does this look like, and changing their perspective. And they're like, oh wow. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing right now. And so watching their face and watching them take those things and be able to communicate better with their counterparts, and watching them learn how to support them better in their way. So men don't feel as if we have to close up all the time. And I
Right.
always have to remind not just the men, but the women as well. The first time someone has a conversation and they're in your world, and the first time they say I, the individual that you're talking to will shut down. And they become a version of themselves that they can survive whatever they're going through, because you
Hmm.
just now invalidated what they're feeling, and you'll
Yes.
never get it out of them again. Now, when it comes to end of life, during COVID, the whole lockdown thing, I was I was considered essential. Don't ask me why, but I was, right. And I found myself going to hospice, you know, uh, facilities. And I remember driving. Well, the first time I was driving past, and I saw these people sitting outside because there was nobody allowed inside, right? So I'm watching these
Yeah.
people sit outside and they're looking into the windows at their loved ones as they're passing away. Now, and you would only drive past for so many times and you see people break down. And my heart said, something inside me said, go over there. So I pulled into the parking lot. I walked over there, and I was sitting with this gentleman that I never knew his name, but I asked him, I said, do you mind if I sit with you? He goes, yeah, sure. I said, well, what's going on? He goes, you know, my family members in there, they're on life support right now. They're about ready to pass away, and I can't be there with them. I said, well, you mind if I sit with you? Yes, yes. And that began that journey of my curiosity, and I started doing that over and over and over and over again. So, and then after a while, hospitals was like, hey, would you mind just coming over? If we give you a call, can you come over and sit with these friends? Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And they never wanted and once asked me, what do I do? Right. So it's like, all right, I'll come, and then eventually they were like, what do you do? And I told them, I said, I have a nonprofit, I work with men, and this is what I do. They were like, wow. So that began my relationship with them. Now, fast forward with this new organization, I decided I'm gonna become a deaf doula. I would love to go and sit with people, um, but not just sit with them, but to be able to work with them during that
Yes.
transition periods, right? So even before that transition periods, helping them come up with plans, how to have the conversation with their family, to take over that responsibility so they can live the best life that they possibly can, you know, and the importance of having a will, and things like that. Don't wait till the last minute, because all of these things could happen. And so that's my next journey in my world. So I am walking into your world of death, dying, and grief.
Well, I can if I told you going through COVID as a funeral director was easy,
Mm,
I would be lying. I had an infant, my daughter Chloe, she was born in April of 2019. So COVID happened, she was still on formula. And we lived in Seattle, where COVID started in the
yeah, that's
US.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I worked
yes.
for a facility that wasn't a funeral home, but we worked on behalf of all the funeral homes in the state of Washington to bring in the deceased individuals who their funeral homes didn't have room.
Wow.
So I was actually the manager and I was responsible for dispatching out my team, my very, very tired, exhausted team with proper gear and equipment to bring in these individuals who have died of COVID. eventually I ended up at a funeral home instead, and the amount of times that, funeral directors as a whole broke down during COVID simply because of the collective grief. I
Yeah.
Even in my own building, it was horrible, and it's not, we understand as professionals, and you probably get this, when people are grieving and they're going through one of their stages of grief of anger,
Mhm.
they're going to lash out, and they're going to lash out at whoever's the closest.
Right.
Guess who was standing right there? Me, my coworkers. We were the ones who got the attacks. You can't attack the doctors. You can't attack the nurses. You can't attack the grocery workers. Um, I was the one in their mind, in their grief, that was preventing them from seeing their loved one or having a service. That the purpose of a service of any kind is the closure, to lay your
Right.
hands on the body of your loved one who you'll never get to see again, whether they're being cremated or buried or anything else. Um, it's something that we were only allowed to have, I believe, for that firm, it was 10 people in the chapel that normally held dozens and dozens of people.
Right.
Um, it was horrible, and the onslaught that, funeral service, death care as a whole kept getting about how it was us that were keeping people away from their families. We had to come up with new innovative ways to help them through the grief process, those stages of grief that we all go through in waves. Um, it was horrific. It was horrible, and there's a lot of people in death care who just said, "You know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be a funeral director anymore. I'm going to instead go and sit with the individuals who are dying. I don't want them after they're gone. I want them before. I'm going to give them a good death. The death they
Mm.
have is going to be the death they want. And then the service, I'm going to take my education from funeral service, and I'm going to sit with them, and I'm going to see, how do they envision not just the ending of their life up to the end, but after. Who's there? Who's present with that body? Where is
Yes.
that body? It doesn't necessarily have to be in a church or in a funeral home. No, there's no rules. Who made these rules? You
Very
know?
true.
And
Yes.
that I think is the core of our personhood, who we are as individuals. I don't think we're meant to all be in a church, in a temple, in a mosque, or anything like that, to be set in this box, the
Right.
stationary box of grief.
Yes. Yes.
There's so many people that, yeah, that's perfect. But the amount of times, especially in rural America, where I've met a family where they said, well, this is what we have to do because this is just what we do. And it's literally, you show up, you have a visitation, you have a service the next day, you have hot beef sandwiches in the church basement, and you process to the cemetery, and then that's it. You're done.
Mm.
How does that sum up the life of somebody who lives, decades, maybe not even decades? Some people, young people die. How does that sum up the life of a young person in their teens or 20s? Is that
Right.
truly them? And then how do you sum up the life of somebody who's lived 100 years to be, I hate to say it, but to be reduced down to a basement hot beef sandwich and prayers, which is great, but there's so much more that this person was as a human. What did they do? And I think that's important and what we need to focus on, and why I love the death companioning aspect so much, because you can be all encompassing.
Right. And I love that idea. And I think, that's the reason why I'm looking at getting my death doula certification, right? Because
Hmm.
understanding the importance of helping this individual playing out their own, what does it look like for you, right? Because
Yes.
in those moments, it is about you. It is about you. What do you want? The music? Do you want your family around? What do you invite? Let's have the best possible transitioning that you can ever imagine. We're going to make it happen for you, right? And I don't think people really understand how important it is to come up with a plan, right? That the planning
Right.
stage, because it's such an uncomfortable conversation, right?
It is.
They barely can have the conversation with their families. And so, like one of the things I decided to do was that I wanted to educate people. So I was going to I'm doing a death cafe. And people are like, what
Yes.
is this? I said, well, it's a place to where we can normalize the conversation. We can, I will sit with you. If you're afraid of dying, let's talk about it. If how do you have this conversation? Let's talk about all of these things. Let's come up with a plan. How do you envision your life? I want you to live your best finite life up until, and then even afterwards, I want to make sure that your family is taken care of. So they're not worried about where to go, I'm saying, who to talk to and things like that. I'll take care of that for you. Right. And I don't think people really understand it because it's such a huge negative stigma. I was it's crazy because when I decided to do this, I got a comment from someone. They said, "Oh no, we don't talk about that. That's such. I don't want to talk about that negativity." I said, "Why is it so negative? It's something that you're going to experience
Mhm.
at some point in your life. If you haven't, you will." That's like no. That's like, well, let's just lay it out on the table. What's easier, to have the conversation to normalize it, or to wait till it's already too late, then trying to figure it out as you go along? Because a lot of people don't.
Mhm. It's
A lot of
such a
people go,
gift.
yes, yes. Oh, it's a beautiful gift, right? To be able to take ourselves and it takes a special individual to be able to do something like that, because I think we grieve those individuals as well because of the time that we spend with them, right? Getting to know what they want, getting to know, hey, where do you like your estate? You know, where does that go? What about the bills? We need to close those things out. All of those different things that come along with it. So, that was my thought behind it. I said, you know what? This is one more way to where I can help someone else, and be able to walk with them in their grief. So I have that education as well. And I can go, you know what? I have all of these resources. Let me give these to you. And then when it comes down to the family, so, oftentimes they don't know where to turn for support, right?
Right.
So I go, hey, here's these support groups. Well, I don't know about that. Would you like me to go with you? I will go with you to these support groups and everything. We're going to figure out what's going to work for you and what doesn't work for you, and then we're going to focus on what works for you, right? And I'm going to be there every step of the way till you don't need me anymore. People don't understand the importance of that work, and thank you for the work that you do, and making a decision to do it, right? That's such a huge calling. It's such a huge calling.
It's it's difficult. One thing, and I haven't gotten to this point yet in my PhD program since I just started, but research wise, and this is going to sound interesting, but we always talk about the care we can give somebody who is grieving.
Mhm.
Um, but have you ever thought about the care we could give each other as people who help the grievers? Think about the amount of things a death companion sees, the amount of things a death doula sees, or a funeral director, or even a crematory operator. The
Mhm.
people who see death every day, what kind of traumas are we going through?
Right.
And that's an aspect of my company that I'm really wanting to focus on, and I intend to do my PhD somewhat on that as well, as evaluating the grief processes that death care professionals are going through.
Right.
There is a slightly increased risk of suicide rates in the death care community simply because of the things we've seen. We don't really have outlets. I don't. I mean, I do because my husband's ex-military and he's fine with it. But a lot of people don't have the ability to go home after caring for a deceased individual who might have died from really horrible, traumatic things,
Mhm.
and tell their spouse, "Man, I had a really bad day at work. Here's what happened." You don't get that. You just bottle it up.
Very true.
So if you think about it, think about your certain communities that are out there in the US where we have instances where funeral directors or crematories or even death companions and therapists haven't experienced certain things. Think of, let's just bring it up, Uvalde, Texas. huge shooting of children. There's
Mm,
funeral homes there that had how many children? I don't know how many, I don't remember how many children died during that shooting, but I'm sure there was one funeral home that had to deal with the death of multiple children.
right.
How does a funeral professional deal with multiple dead children from gunshot wounds and their families and their grief, the community grief that is now thrust upon them, and the
Mm,
grief they're feeling within themselves of having to see this stuff, having to deal with this stuff, and they don't know how. I mean, we know how to do our job, but we don't know how to unpack the rest of it and how
right.
to assist the families in unpacking the bigger picture. And those are the kinds of things that I want to hone in on and teach. I plan on having a class specifically for different backgrounds as well. Like you mentioned your company, your nonprofit working with men. Why would that not be a specific class? African American men and grief, Asian men and grief, island nation men and grief. These are certain aspects where, yes, you are men, you all grieve, but is your grief, Tony, going to be the same as the grief of an individual who's in Mumbai, India, even though he's a man? You have different life experiences based on your culture and your background and where you were raised and the things you've experienced in
Right.
life. And there's certain locations that have never experienced certain things. And now, because of the way of the world, they're thrust into it.
It's
So,
very true. And you know, it's amazing that you brought that up, right? Because um, I was actually working on a program similar to that, right? Where do we as grief workers go, right? And one of the reasons why I founded the Global Grief Network was for that specific reason right there. It's a place that we can come and be supported, but also be around like-minded individuals that
mhm.
speak the same language as we do. Because when you start to speak the language of grief, people tend to look at us and go, wow, what are you guys talking about? Right. So I
Mhm.
was like, you know what? It'd be amazing to have a place where we don't sound crazy, right? Where we can unpack and be supported to one another, right? To share the resources and be resources for other people as well. Because that place is also a foundation where I can go in and say, hey, I have a young lady, and this is what she's going through, and I can put that information in there. And all these individuals come together and go, hey, give me more information about it. Let me reach out to her, this, and another. So I know that there's resources there,
Yes.
and they come back. Then it becomes a place to where we can decompress. Now, another great thing about it is because it led into something else, right? So I'm in the process of putting together a program. Okay, I don't want to tell too much about it, but it's definitely going to be a program. But that's the basics. It's going to be. I'm working on whether or not if it's going to be a 6 or 12 week program where we're going to educate and train and certify grief accomplices, people that can walk with individuals that are going through grief, right? And so when we think about the grieving process and things like that, we do have a great basics for it, the 5 stages of
Mhm.
grief, but we both know that the 5 stages of grief was written for people who were going through terminal illness.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily follow that. So how do we educate people and certify them to where they can walk with individuals and be effective in that area? But also they can come back and have a place to decompress as well. So we something that we're putting together right now. We're definitely in the works. So it's going to be something pretty amazing. It's never been done before, but right along the same lines of what you're doing. Uh, so just put that out there. Like great minds think alike, man. Great minds
We
think
gotta
alike.
do it. It has to be done. It's I
Yeah.
don't wanna say save the world or anything, but, it might create a more what's the word I'm looking for? More of like a holistic feel for everybody. It might create a world companionship where we're not looking at these really horrible instances and feeling alone. Um,
Right.
gosh, I mean, even now with what's going on in the Middle East,
Oh wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
don't get into politics ever with anything, but you know, I recognize the fact that a lot of people outside of that small area, the world, they're feeling what's going on there and they don't know how to process this. It's no longer something that's just over there.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
media has
it's
brought it to us
yeah,
and now we're watching, you know,
yeah. And then
watching it
we
in real
have
time.
we have family members, that live over here, that have family
Mhm.
members that live over in the Middle East, right?
Right.
Ukraine, all of these different things. Since the war started over in Ukraine, you see all of these individuals, and then we see what our government is doing, right? And then we look at them and go, hey, come on now, we got to figure out something. Then the next war breaks out. Then you look at the trickle effect, right? You know what I'm saying? Look at what's going over in the UK. Look at what's going over there in Germany, Ireland, Scotland. I think people are feeling their effect. Then we have to look at, okay, when you start to unpack it, look at what's going on to our borders, right? And look at what's
Mhm.
going on our soil. People are in a place of, one, disbelief, two, uncertainty, and three, extreme anger. Now, how do we go in there and go, okay, we see what's going on. How do we come up with solutions for our people? We can't stop the war that's going on.
Right.
We can't stop the war that's going on, but how can we come up with solutions to support them and be able to walk with them, let them know that they're not by themselves? Maybe we can, like, and is it has to be a way to change, to leave something better in the world than what we got right now. We're looking at
Right.
inflation and all of these. And people are in a place now to where I see the importance of having not just a team, but a multitude of people that have
A
the
community.
understanding of and a community, right? That can go out there and say, we're here. Let's see what we can do, right?
Mhm.
And then with everybody with our expertise, our knowledge, and our gifts and things like that, how can we become more effective in those
Mhm.
areas with them?
I agree. I don't I feel like obviously we can't do anything. We as individuals can't do anything about what's going on at the borders,
Yeah.
um, in other countries, even on our own streets with the homeless population.
Oh,
We have a lot of unhoused people here in America that need help, and I can do things. I can help maybe 1, 2 people, with the finances I have, the resources I have, but collectively, what can we do? I think if we come together as a whole and really address the issues, the government's not gonna fix this.
no, no. Look, they've been trying to figure out how to get rid of us, man.
We
You know,
need to we have to take this into our own hands. We have to fix
right.
us. No one
And
else
but
is gonna fix us but us.
this is true, but it takes us going into those communities, right? You know what I'm saying? And I found that, with some people I talk to, they oftentimes are afraid because they don't know what to expect in those communities, right? Like when being an ex game banger, I tell people, hey, let's go over there and that can be, oh, Tony, oh, they may do something to us. Huh?
They're
You'd
not
be
gonna do
surprised
anything to
about
you.
life.
Jeez.
Well, think about this. Media has come in and given this really, really dire interpretation of the game banger, right? You know what I'm saying? Or those people that are in those communities. They all carry guns. They all sell drugs. They all kill people and things like that. The misconception of it. So when it comes down to people who've never experienced that, they're afraid to walk into situations like that, right? Until now, I have a buddy of mine. This is what he does. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to Compton. I'm gonna go to Watts. I'm gonna go to over here. I'm gonna go to where the game bangers are and things like that. And you know what? They've never once harmed him. As a matter of fact, when he shows up, they're like, "Hey, you going in the building? All right, we got you. We out here. You know what I'm saying? We make sure that everything is good." That man can't walk to the store without somebody walking with him. Oh, you going to the store? Come on, let's go. He got his own little entourage following him, right? And I'm telling people, like, look, suck that fear up and let's go walk with them. See, what you don't understand is that collectively, as you mentioned, we go in there, we give them something, and they take it and they put it out into the communities. And that's where I educate people at. I said, you do realize that the gangs were formed to do exactly what they're doing right now, which is looking out for the people in their community, right? You know what I'm saying?
Because nobody else was.
Because no one else was, right? Like the Crips. I used to be a Crip before, before all the chaos and stuff happened. So I understood it. I understood the history. There was an offshoot from the Black Panther Party. What was the Black Panther Party doing? Well, they were out there advocating to keep the police out of the neighborhood because they realized every time the police came into the neighborhood, people died. So let's keep them out, right? You know what I'm saying? Let's start educating ourselves on our constitutional rights. And then when he went to Washington, D.C., the Crips was formed to take over that, right? And they did pretty good for so far, And then the war happened and people forgot why they were doing it. I said, now that the guys like myself that have gotten older, we're like, hey, let's go back to the basics. You know what I'm saying? Our kids need a safe place to grow up and be children without all this violence. They need a place to go and, be safe and experience their childhood without all of the craziness that's going on. I'm going, let's go in there. Let's go. That's where we need to be. That's where we're going to be more effective because just like you said, they're dealing with generational trauma. People that come from the generation I've come from, there was a lot of things because we was raised by boomers, right? You know what I'm saying? So we got our butt whipped all the time, but we were out there, we were in the communities and our communities cared. And to look at the way that it is now, I go, you know what? This is what we're called to do. We've been here, we've done that. Let's go in there and walk with the children. Let's go reopen up the Boys and Girls Club. Let's go to the YMCA that's been shut down. Let's open it back up so the kids can go swim. Let's create Little League football and Little League basketball. Let's, soccer. Let's introduce some things into the neighborhood that hasn't been done before, and let's be the people that we are meant to be for our youth, because our youth is going to help direct everything else that comes in that community. They know what they need.
Yes.
We just got to go in there and listen to them.
The one thing that has stood out my whole career, and this is something from a long time ago, is when I was living in California, I was in East Los Angeles working in a firm there, and I had to go pick up an individual who died in prison from their local medical examiner in a different county. And I had met with the individual's mother. And one thing that really stood out is I was bold. I was young and I probably shouldn't have asked this. I looked right at that woman and I said, "Can I ask what happened?" I was curious, early 20s. I wanted to know, like, why are you, because the mindset they train you to have is this individual was a gang member. This individual was in prison. They did something bad to be there. They deserved it. And I go, "Ma'am, you're still here for your child." And she goes, "He will always be my son. I will always be his mother. No matter what he does, I will always love him. And he was not a good person in what he did, but he was a good son to his mother and his father." And I take that information. I don't know what gang he was a member of. It was East Los Angeles something. And I took that knowledge that she just sat down and put into me. And I really I took that and I just ran with it. I ended up working in Inglewood. I've worked in Compton. I've worked in firms, all across the country of various socioeconomic statuses and backgrounds and cultures. And the thing is no matter how bad that person was, who's dead now, no matter what they did, they could have killed puppies every day, 12 puppies a day for 30 years. Their mom will still love them, usually,
Yeah.
generally speaking. There's somebody out there, there's still a person, and there's still somebody that cares. It might not be you, it might not even be their immediate family, but there is some connection. Even serial killers and mass murderers have mamas.
This is very true.
Yeah,
This is very
that
true.
love them.
And we have to look at that. Like, this is where the empathetic side of us comes out, because we do understand that, right? And I've seen it from the opposite side where, I was the game banger, and, I almost didn't make it as well. My mother, I remember before my mother passed away, she and I got into a conversation. As a matter of fact, this is long before she passed away, and I was in the gangs, and I was deep. I was so deep, And she goes, "Baby, I want you to be careful, because the last thing I want to do is bury you." I said, "Mama," I said, "why do you care? Why do you care? I'm out here, I'm doing everything I can to survive. Why do you care? What happens to me? I'm just another black boy out here on the streets. No one cares about me. And plus, you'll have less headache if I wasn't around. But I'm going to keep doing what I got to do in order to survive. And if I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't." That was my mentality, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't think about, whether or not, if you're going to make it. You just got to survive. You have to survive by any means necessary. May not be the best way that the normal person, or the average person may look at it, but I have to do what I have to do in order to survive. Or I might as well lay down, because somebody's going to take my life. I had to disassociate myself from emotions. I can't be attached to the people that are around me. You know how lonely of a life that is? And then to, like you said, Mom was like, "You still my baby boy. You the first one. You my oldest. Of course I'm going to care about you. I care about what you're doing. I care about what you're going through. And I know you got to survive. Man, I really wish you can walk away from this." I said, "Well, that ain't going to happen." Right? I remember when I got shot, and I called my mother up, and I had to tell her what had happened. My mother broke down crying over the phone. Broke down crying over the phone. I said, "What you crying for?" She goes, "Do you not understand the pain that I feel in my heart right now?" My father did the same thing. He goes, "Dude, you're my son." When I got out of the gangs, and I began to go back and look at the life that I've lived, the people that I encountered, the people that didn't make it, their families, I got to see exactly what you was talking about. Regardless of what we did, or how we lived, there's always somebody out there that cares.
Yep.
So now, when you look at that as a former game banger, to go back and see those families that you probably have impacted, or was impacted from other things, you see the trail of tears that's left from the choices that we make. Now, being in it, we don't see it. We only see it from one perspective: survival of the fittest, right? We're going to deal with the consequences, right? You know what I'm saying? Survival of the fittest. Afterwards, it broke my heart. It broke my heart to see the kids that was left behind, that had to be raised by single mothers, and see the families that was left behind that still grieve the loss of their son or daughter. And I stepped back. And then I started going after the people that was in the gangs. I was like, "Look, this can't keep happening. This cannot keep happening." And they looked at me. I was like, "No more. No more. We either go back the way that it was, or we have to move it on, because this is not working." Then I watched the generational change, right? You know what I'm saying? I watched it change. I watched everything change from the beginning to where it is now. And although you may not hear about the gang violence, we got something a little bit worse than that now. We got school shootings and fentanyl. So now we have to think about that, right? It just changed up on us. And so to go in there and see those families that have lost their children to fentanyl and all those different things, the police shootings and things like that, I walk with these individuals. And there ain't nothing that I can do except for walk with them. Get to be the best version of myself that I possibly can, because in that moment, I'm a visitor in their space. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes us effective in that area. It's because we understand that we are visitors in their space. And we want so much to change what has happened. And that's the hardest part, because we want what has changed. We don't want anyone to ever have to experience the loss of a child or, someone close to them. We don't. Unfortunately, it does happen. And when it comes down to us, those that walk with them, we carry a lot of that. And I think one of my colleagues posed the question, do we unnecessarily go back into our grief after we, while we walking with other individuals? Is there a trigger? Is there something that takes us back there? And the answer is always yes.
Absolutely.
Because as much as we like to say that we heal from a lot of things, and we do, don't get me wrong, we do, but there are still things that take us back and say, we're not done with you yet. So how do we combat that with all the different factors that are played into it?
Best I could come up with is community and education. Mm-hmm. Walk with them. One thing that, and I never thought I would have to have these kinds of conversations ever, suicide conversations in communities. And I'm not talking about your adult ones. I'm talking about your 10, 11, 12-year-old child.
Yes.
The fact that we have to have these kinds of conversations, and the fact that some school shootings, because we just mentioned these, they're not always perpetrated by an outside source. Sometimes they're from within. They're from that child who's been tortured and bullied for so long, or has some sort of mental illness, or something wrong is happening in that child's life to make them come to school with a weapon to do these things. And are we not recognizing? We have all the flippin' technology we could imagine, and we're not recognizing that there is a 9-year-old child who is suffering greatly, whether it be at home or at school or both, and they can't get away. And the only thing to help them get away is to bring a weapon to school, or to kill their parents when they're 9 years old, or to kill themselves. A permanent solution to a temporary problem is how it reads.
Right. And it's I love that you brought that up, because it brought back an article about a young girl. She was being bullied at school and no one knew. Mm-hmm. No one knew.
Computers.
Computers, right? But she was being bullied, and she goes home, and she's the nicest kid that you want to be around. Honor roll student, right? And one day her mother was at work and came home and found her daughter. Found her daughter with a note that said, "Mommy, I love you, but I don't think I belong here." And that's all it read. So the mother had to find her young daughter, had taken her life. And I think about this now because, I've had to have these conversations. As a matter of fact, one of the organizations that are here work with the young, work with the youth. And so they do have those support groups, and they do have those conversations and things like that. And I don't think I've ever seen it like this before. I don't think I've ever seen them like this before. Technology, people can hide around, behind the keyboards and, and cause all kind of mischief, and when I had my son before he passed away, he asked me one day, because there were some kids at school. My son was mulatto or mixed race. And so some of the kids were making fun of him. And so when he comes home, he and I had this conversation. I said, well, how does it make you feel? He goes, well, it hurts, but I'm angry. I said, well, why are you angry? He goes, because I want to just punch him out. I said, well, that doesn't solve anything. Don't solve anything. So what I learned, and this is just me. I taught my son to have a very witty personality, very, very witty. I said, you already a character, right? You know what I'm saying? So let's work on some comebacks, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want you getting mad, because, you know what I'm saying? Because if they're not putting their hands on you, don't worry about what they say. You can't change what anybody says. That's the reality of this world that we live in. But what you can do, when they come and say these things, use this up here. Say the first thing that comes to your mind. And he did. And so instead of getting calls of him fighting, I got calls of him getting himself in trouble because he was calling kids names.
Well, if they're going to do it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he got in a lot of trouble, because whenever I get the call, the teacher or the principal be laughing their butt off, like, you're not gonna believe what Jake just did, right? I'm like, what did he do? And so they would tell me, I'm like, oh my God, all right. They were like, well, it's better than an alternative. I said, yeah, think about this, right? If I had not intervened and taught him how to do this, would he had been one of those children that came to school? Because I worked, right? I don't see him while he's at school. I don't know what's going on with him while he's at school. And then when I come and get him from school and and things like that, it's always me and him. So I was always in his business. What you got going on? What's that? What you playing with on your phone? Huh? Let me see. Oh, you got a game? All right. What kind of game is that? So I was always in his business. And I always recommend him to do that. Be in your kids' business, right? You know what I'm saying? Because you need to know what they're doing. And so I was that dad. But I wanted to make sure that he never took this life personal, right? It's not personal. It's just a part of the growing process. It's a rite of passage now. If you can get through this, I guarantee you life will be so much better, because you're no longer looking at things and going, oh, well, I'm going to be mad about this. No, don't get upset. Don't get upset, because if you can survive me, the world will be a cakewalk for you.
Right. The thing that I have always done, and I think my husband said the same thing about when he was a kid, is you go, I only have to make it through this amount of time. So elementary school, I only have to get through this many years until I get to junior high. Then I only have to get through this many years till high school's done. Then this many years until, the next thing. I think you have to look at life that way, because if you're in a time in your life that's not jiving with you, and it's not where you want to be, and it's really horrible and sucks, it's not going to last forever. Generally speaking, most people do not have that bad time forever. Even when I was in college, I didn't have a great time the first time around where I was in person. I said, you know what, I just got to get through these classes, and then I get my degree, and then I don't have to speak to these people ever again. And it worked out, unfortunately, what happened back when I was a child is I was bullied at school a lot, and I came home and it was not great, but one was a reprieve from the other depending on the day. Now for kids these days, for my daughter, she's 4, so not quite yet, but if she's being bullied at school, how is she going to get away? They're coming right to that little cell phone right here, and they'll bother you at home. Whereas she can escape at home, she can't escape technology and the kids that are out there if she's not the popular girl. No, but my kid's a beast. I absolutely expect this kid to
I love it. She said, I get a beast.
She is. So I do this. My husband and I do the, what are you doing? Well, what's on your iPad? What are you playing with there? What happened at school today? She goes off every day to school, and she goes, Mom, flips her hair, and she goes, I'm not talking to you right now. You need to leave me alone. Flips her hair and walks away. She's 4.
Oh my God.
She
Yeah,
goes,
she's a
"Don't
beast.
talk to me." She goes, "Don't talk to me in my face. We're not talking."
Yeah, she's a
So,
beast.
she runs the show. She knows she's in charge. She's
But
in
see,
charge here, she's in charge at school, she's boss.
I love it though, right? Because you're doing all the right things. You're teaching her to be independent and you're not taking anybody's mess. Oh, you want to mess with me? You don't understand. I'll come over there. What?
Yeah, it sounds like I'm doing the right thing until I realize my own personality is in somebody that is this tall, coming
Mm.
right back at me, and I said, "No, this wasn't part of what the discussion like, use it everywhere else, don't use it on me."
No, no, no. See, you don't understand. You don't look. As a parent, the mini me, right? You know what I'm saying? That's the mini me. All of that goodness and craziness that's inside. Oh yeah, that's inside of this one right here. And so I watched my grandmother told my mother one time with my sister, right? Because I was the mellow one. I was literally the mellow one. Now my sister was not the mellow one. And my mother caught hell with her. My grandmother used to laugh at her and go, "Remember all the stuff that you used to do to me? And I told you, wait till you have your first daughter. It's gonna come back." That's the one right there. She goes, "You got lucky with him. He's a mellow one when he wants to be. But he has another side to him that I don't think you know about. But that one right there, oh yeah, she's just like you are." So my mother used to always bump heads. I used to sit around and laugh. And that girl, my sister, just like you said, my sister is a beast. She don't care. She don't even care. She's older now, 2 years younger than me, and she has 4 daughters. Now, my sister and the relationship that she has with her daughters, don't ever get in a fight with one of them. Don't get in a fight with one of them because two things I realized: one, they will jump you, right? They all 5 of them will jump you. Two, my middle niece, she don't care. That middle girl don't care nothing. She's she don't care at all. So when I look at when I'm down visiting and everything, I look at them and I just go like this. Yep, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut because when y'all decide to jump me,
Smart.
I'm beating each and every last one of you up. I'm still the oldest, right? And my sisters go, "Boy, you don't even understand. We'll get you too." I go, "Yeah, you may get me now, but y'all got to go to sleep, and I know how to break into your house." I said, "So try me if you want to. I'll beat you. I'll beat you with a toilet paper holder." These are the things that we do. Yes, I will beat you with a toilet paper holder. I'm not going to hurt you, right? But I need to let you know that I'm here.
It's funny, when I do speak to my mother, still to this day, she's like, "You never listened," and I was like, "Still ain't listening to you, bye."
See, and you
She
doing
just
it. And you wonder why the little one is over there getting you. Hmm. Hmm.
she don't listen my kid does not listen to me, she loves her dad. They're like
Oh yeah.
she looks identical to him, but she has my personality.
Ooh. Yeah, she's gonna be a handful. It may take her a little while to get out of that little stage right there. But my God, man, you got
It's
your hand.
very hard it's very hard not to balance or it's very hard to balance the gentle parenting that I'm learning, you know,
Mm.
because that's not how I was raised. The kind parenting where you ask the child questions, you interact with the child more than I was interacted with as a child, with the, "I'm gonna beat you."
And you know what? I'm gonna tell you a little secret, right? When my son was 4 years old, this kid, by the time he was 4 years old, he got kicked out of 5 schools.
Oh god.
5, right? Not his fault. He learned at a very early age, which I didn't know. He had to learn how to take care of himself. He had to learn, so he learned how to fight. So he was a natural born battle dog like his daddy. Now, when I got him, he didn't, and all of these things happened. Ooh, gentle parenting was not in my realm. I was like, oh, You want to go around fighting people? And then the last one was pretty severe. He grabbed his teacher. Now, mind you, he was short. He grabbed his teacher, picked her up, and threw her down on the ground. Like literally, picked her up and slammed her down on the ground and kicked her with a sharp, yeah, in her private area, made her bleed.
Mm.
I got that phone call. Oh yeah, when I got home, I was like, look, we're not talking. I'm whooping you. I'm tightening you up real quick, like, right? So I did that. He got himself together. Then I talked to his mother. Then I talked to someone else. Then I realized what his mother had did. So 2 and 2 started going together. I said, okay, I'm gonna have to do something different. So I learned how to parent him. Like I had to change up everything that I thought that I knew, and I had to learn different things so I can be better for him. And once I figured that out, I was like, by the time he was 6 years old, me and this little dude was like this, was just like this. He never got into another fight. He was very witty, had a character on him that would make you die laughing. And the teachers just saw a whole new turnaround, right? His mother didn't understand it because his mother came from a place of narcissism. So when you take that and you put that into a kid, there's a whole lot of things that was going on that I had to learn. And I was like, okay, first and foremost, with this relationship, I need you to understand that I'm not going anywhere. It's me and you. So when he realized that I wasn't going anywhere, he knew that he had somebody that cared about him at a very early age. And I made sure that he knew that every step of the way, every step of the way. And he taught me how to be a good man. And then he taught me how to be a good father. And so I never gentle parented him, you know what I'm saying? Because I wanted him to understand that the world that you're living in, this is the way that it is. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not fun. And as a young male, as a young mixed male, you got certain challenges. But this is how we're gonna overcome them. This is it. This is what we're gonna do every step of the way. You're gonna have to learn some things on your own. There's some things I can't teach you, right? Because you live in a different generation than me. And I tell you, it was the best decision I ever made, learning how to be a better man and better father for him, especially in this world, you know, especially watching the children and the epidemic that's going on with the drugs, the suicides, the runaways, all of these different things. And I always try to figure out now, how can I do more to help these other organizations reach them, right? Especially in this day and age.
Man, these kids.
Man, these kids.
Seriously, you know, even if I had given birth to my daughter at a younger age, because I'm 36, I had her at 32 years old. Even if I had made this child more than a decade earlier, it would have been completely different. Like the world is changing so quickly
Yes.
that it's almost impossible for the different generations to keep up. The things that are happening, I think they said the current generation is the only generation who hasn't been in some sort of turmoil throughout their life. I mean, there's babies who were born during the pandemic. Chloe was born not much before it, but you know, that pandemic for the children who were starting school, it's completely different. The children, I can't call them children, they're adults now. The kids I teach that are adults now who did their whole high school career during the pandemic have no clue how to function properly out there in the world. And I don't even want to say properly because it's just different. It's just different functioning than what I'm used to, than what you're used to, because they never had the opportunities. They didn't get the social construct of being in a school of over 1,000 kids for 4 years and the ins and outs of the cliques and the groups and popularity. It was just, you're at home for 4 years learning or attempting to learn. One thing, and I didn't understand this because there were bigger things going on during COVID, obviously, was all the high schoolers who were so upset that they were like, I don't get to go to prom. I don't get to go to dance. I don't get to go to football games or anything." And I said, "Why does it matter? Why do you care about that?" And I realized that it's not the item itself, the things that they're my cat, that they're,
I see. I see. That's okay.
that they're experiencing that are the issue that they're upset about. It's the fact that it's almost as if it's like a rite of passage, and
Mhm.
it's a social mark that they cannot continue on developmentally without doing these very specific tasks. It's really odd how prom can be a social task that needs to, in some aspect, whether they go or not, it needs to happen so that they can learn how to navigate life in that specific year of, I guess, living in high school. Um, I was forced to go to prom. I didn't want to. There were a lot of things I didn't want to do in high school. Dancing with other people was one of them. And so if you gave me
Understand.
the opportunity to not go to these events with other people, I would have been happy. I would have loved staying home for 4 years and not going out to interact with high school. But the experience was forced upon me.
Right,
They didn't even get the experience, so it's a social construct for them, and they
right,
have grief about that, and now they are trying to learn or unlearn certain things, learn new things and unlearn stuff that they messed up for 4 years alone in their kitchen while doing homework, you
right,
know? It's the type of person that is developing into an adult now is very vastly different, and that's why I feel that the changes we're making in death care and end of life care and social care, 'cause that's what this is social care. We're trying to encompass all aspects of life to the end. They're very important in how we interact with each other. We must address these from the very beginning. Just like your kid when they're very little and they're learning how to interact with other kids, they must. The parents that keep their kids home for 5, 6, 7 years, however long they're allowed to, their child is at a disadvantage sometimes because they're not interacting with other children all the time. My kid, social butterfly. Other people's kids, I have a neighbor, her kid just started going to school, has never been away from mom, not a social. She's never had to. So now all these children are stunted in high school when your brain is developing into your dreams, your ambitions. Your suicide rate will increase for some of them. They're doing research right now on this because there's so many who missed out on a big aspect of their life. They don't know how to function out here in the world. But the ones that don't know how to function, they're actually changing the function of the world. So it's very interesting that these individuals they're changing how we interact with each other. I now have to interact with people who are significantly younger than me, and it's a different world they're in. Looks like Tony's internet just went out, everybody. So I'm going to shut it down for now and we might be back soon.